Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 95, Naval Maneuvers. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on Lapras as usual, this time on their way to Naval Island. Ash is talking to Tracy about the gym battle that he's going to have on Naval Island, with Tracy revealing that the gym badge was a shell with a ruby on it. Their conversation is then cut off as Ash yells out in excitement when he sees Naval Island in the distance, particularly its large-ass mountain. Ash commands Lapras to take them there as soon as possible. However, when they arrive at the beach, Ash immediately questions if Nurse Joy had lied to him, as he couldn't see the gym anywhere. A man in a boat then arrives, having heard Ash's questioning, and immediately confirms to Ash that he knew where the gym was located. He agrees to show them to the gym, and introduces himself as Danny, before going up and immediately trying to win over Misty. Damn, that's rare. Misty introduces herself back, along with Ash and Tracy, and immediately falls for Danny. I guess it was love at first sight for both of them, and Ash and Tracy are immensely shocked by this. For one, they've never seen Misty be the one to simp, it's always been Brock, and two, this Danny guy was fucking hitting on a kid. They were also likely just shocked that anyone could like Misty. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on Ash and the gang in their Magikarp sub as usual, but they hadn't come up with an exact plan yet, as they were too busy practicing their motto. Typical. Ash and the gang then go with Danny, beginning their trek to the naval gym. And Danny brings a huge-ass backpack with him, even though Tracy's was still bigger, which impresses Misty due to the fact that it showed that Danny was super prepared all the time, which she proceeds to compare to Ash, stating how Ash was never prepared, calling him as irresponsible as a little kid. This pisses off Ash, who tries his best to counter, as Danny just laughs, believing Misty and Ash is arguing to actually be signs that they loved each other. Misty panically runs up to Danny and informs him that this was not the case, wanting to make sure that Danny knew that she was single, and as for Ash, he just walked with Tracy behind them, still pissed off at Misty's statements. He then bitterly questions who Danny was supposed to be anyway, somewhat jealous of the fact that Misty thought that he was better than him, questioning how he knew about the gym in the first place. Tracy suggests that Danny was perhaps another potential gym challenger, and he had figured out the location and was going to go challenge it himself. Just then, they all arrive at the gates to the naval gym and immediately push them open. The first thing they realize is that the gym was not immediately in front of them, but it was rather at the top of a mountain. The only thing immediately in front of them was a small building with a sign next to it that informed everyone that if you wanted to get up to the gym, then you would have to scale the mountain without using any Pokémon. Unless you were not a challenger and rather just a spectator, in which case you could use the nearby building's cable car. Ash complains, but knows that he has to go along with whatever the sign said, as otherwise he likely wouldn't be allowed to challenge the gym. Pikachu encourages him to try his best, stating that he would go up with him as well, even though he couldn't use him. And therefore Ash and Pikachu begin their trek up the mountain, with Danny coming along as well, solidifying the fact that he was likely a challenger too. Ash immediately gets outshined by Danny, who proceeds to climb the mountain at an immensely fast pace, while Ash, on the other hand, struggles due to all of the sharp rocks and his fear of heights. This allows Danny to shoot past him, almost getting farther than the cable car, which Misty and Tracy were currently riding. As the cable car passes by, Misty yells down at Danny, giving him some encouragement, and this gets Ash jealous, as he was used to Misty giving him encouragement, and his jealousy distracts him, causing him to fall, almost hitting Pikachu, who was climbing with him, though his fall is thankfully broken by a large rock on the mountain, so he only falls a little bit. He still struggles to get back up to where he was, though, so he goes to send out Bulbasaur so that he could use his Vine Whip to help pull him up, but then Danny reminds him, like, hey, that's against the rules, bro, and Ash reluctantly puts back his Pokeball, but thankfully for him, manages to get himself back up on his own. After a few more minutes of climbing, Ash gets tired and requests to Danny that they stop on a nearby ledge in the cliff. Danny obliges, even though he really could have just went on without Ash, and therefore challenged the gym first, right? Stating that he wanted to take time to look at the view anyway. Ash tries to take the opportunity to thank Danny for reminding him not to use Bulbasaur, but he's suddenly cut off as Team Rocket show up in their Meowth balloon, throwing a plunger to capture Pikachu. All Ash and Danny see is the plunger, though, as the Meowth balloon was not yet in view, so they're shocked when a plunger just comes out of nowhere and tries to grab Pikachu out of Ash's arms. Team Rocket then reveal themselves and begin to start their motto, but their motto is interrupted as Danny simply pulls the suction cup off of Pikachu, sending it back onto their faces. Team Rocket, mad about their motto being interrupted and their faces getting absolutely pummeled, they try again, throwing the suction cup at Pikachu once more. It only gets sent back towards them by Danny yet again, but this time Danny attached the suction cup to a rock, which also flings the rock back at them, and it pops a hole in their balloon, sending them blasting off. They don't end up blasting off that far, though. In fact, they're still in their balloon, as the deflated balloon arrives near a nearby geyser, after being blasted further up the mountain. Unfortunately for Team Rocket, this geyser does send them blasting off in the typical manner, sending them high into the air. With Team Rocket dealt with, Ash and Danny continue up the mountain, and eventually reach its second half, which was covered in snow. Ash begins to shiver, as, he was barely wearing anything, as he wasn't prepared. I'm sure Danny had a coat. Or I guess not, he was still in a t-shirt. But anyways, despite Ash almost freezing to death, he notices that Pikachu was also freezing to death, so he takes off his vest and uses it to warm up Pikachu, basically using it as like a little baby basket that he can carry him in. Danny is impressed with Ash's kindness, and the fact that he would give up what little warmth he had for his Pokemon. The two of them then continue their now walk up the mountain, as it was now entirely slopes, When they eventually arrive at the top of the mountain, they are greeted by Tracy and Misty, who had already arrived in the cable car, and immediately spot the cable car house at the top. Tracy and Misty, wrapped in blankets due to the cold, immediately run over to Ash and Danny. However, much to Ash's annoyance, Misty runs right past Ash, literally blowing him over, and runs to Danny instead, offering to give him her blanket. Ash is immensely pissed off, as he fully believed that Misty was running towards him, but his anger then turns to shock, as Danny then comes up to him and says that he had passed his test. Misty and Tracy clarify Danny's vague statement by revealing that Danny was in fact not another challenger, but he was the naval gym leader, and he had come up with Ash on the mountain to see if he was a worthy challenger or not, and he had determined that Ash was, and stated that he was now ready to take on the main part of the gym challenge, which involved completing 3 challenges, 2 of which Ash had to win. So it was basically a best 2 out of 3 thing. If Danny won 2 challenges, then Danny would win. If Ash won 2 challenges, Ash would win. Ash agrees to the rules, and the first challenge is explained to him, after Danny shows him the badge, which he could potentially win. And Tracy was right. It was a seashell with a ruby on it. Anyways, Danny reveals that the first challenge was seeing whose Pokemon could freeze hot water the fastest. Ash questions what fucking water they were supposed to freeze, when suddenly 2 giant geysers come rising up. Danny sends out his Nidoqueen, and Ash sends out his Lapras, and they both begin freezing the water. Nidoqueen is a lot fucking faster, though, and is able to win the challenge. Although, Lapras did do pretty well. It got pretty close, but it just made it tired as a result. So, that meant that it would likely be too tired to participate in any of the future challenges, unfortunately. With both glaciers now being turned into ice sculptures, they could be used for the second challenge, which Danny revealed was turning the ice sculptures into sleds by melting them down, gesturing to a sign stating that the sled had to be of 3 distinct designs, and you had to use only 3 Pokemon to successfully create one of these designs. Ash decides to send out his Pikachu and Bulbasaur, along with his Charizard due to it being a fire Pokemon, although he acknowledged that Charizard would likely have trouble obeying him as usual. As for Danny, he sent out his Scyther, Nidoqueen, and Machoke, who all immediately begin to work on their sled. But just as Ash feared, Charizard refuses to work, leaving only Bulbasaur and Pikachu working on his sled, so it's essentially 3 against 2. Ash knew that Bulbasaur's Vine Whip and Pikachu's Thunderbolts were not going to be enough to successfully carve the sled properly, so he begs Charizard to quit loafing around and uses Flamethrower to simply melt the sled. But Charizard refuses. Although, he does use his Flamethrower, trying to hit Ash in annoyance. But Ash is able to dodge the Flamethrower, which means that it actually ends up hitting the sled, melting it just as he wanted. So, because of Charizard, Ash actually managed to win the challenge, even though it was unintentional. But hey, it only took 5 Flamethrowers to successfully carve a sled from an ice block. I'd say that's pretty impressive. With the score now being 1 win each, the third and final challenge began, which was to race down the mountain in the sleds that they had just carved, using 3 Pokemon each as help with driving. Danny decided to use his Electrode, Geodude, and Scyther, and Ash decided to use his Pikachu, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, deciding not to use Charizard if he didn't need to. And I mean, it's not like Charizard would have fit in the sled anyway. Ash and Danny make the way to the top of the hill in their sleds, and a nearby light then turns green as they both start down the mountain, with Danny instantly taking the lead, being able to go a lot faster, since his Scyther dug its claws into the snow to help steer. Ash tried to emulate this strategy by having his Bulbasaur dig his vines into the snow to help steer, but due to the vines being a lot flimsier than Scyther's actual claws, this causes Ash to spin out of control, as Tracy and Misty watch in embarrassment as they took the cable car down. Ash is then able to catch up, though, as Danny runs over a hole in the hill, causing the sled to tumble, and him to fall out with his Pokemon. Instead of taking this as an opportunity to breeze right past Danny and win the race, Ash, being the kind guy that he is, decides to stop and get out of the sled to make sure that Danny was okay from the fall. Danny then reveals that he was fine, but his main concern was the fact that he had been down this hill many times and never encountered that hole before, so this leads him to believe that someone had purposely dug the hole as a trap. And he was right, because who liked to dig holes? Team Rocket, and they just couldn't help themselves from revealing themselves and doing their motto as soon as they heard someone mention a hole. They revealed themselves by exploding 3 snowmen that they were currently disguised as. Ash wasn't surprised by the reveal at all, explaining to Danny how these people were Team Rocket, and they essentially just always dug holes all the fucking time. Danny asks Ash how he knew Team Rocket, thinking they were friends, and Ash almost falls over in disbelief that someone would think that he was friends with Team Rocket. But come on, guys. I mean, I think you're friends at this point. You see each other every day. Anyways, Ash yells at Team Rocket in annoyance to go away and quit their whole bullshit, but Meowth just does the opposite as he presses a button and makes Ash and Danny fall into an even deeper hole. Great, love it. Team Rocket then reach into the hole with a mechanical hand as opposed to a plunger. I guess they realized that the plunger wasn't going to work, and use the hand to grab Pikachu and bring him up to their balloon, capturing him in a glass jar. With Ash and Danny unable to do anything, Team Rocket take the opportunity to go away in their balloon, and Pikachu tries his best to stand up for itself, but when it uses Thunderbolt, all it ends up doing is powering up a toaster and a coffee machine, as the electricity doesn't fully go through the glass cage. They begin to sit down and have a meal, thanks to now having toast and coffee. However, this meal is cut off as they begin to get pelted with snowballs. These snowballs are revealed to come from Ash and Danny, who had escaped the hole with the help of Bulbasaur's Vine Whip, as the Vine Whip grabbed onto a nearby rock and pulled both of them out. Ash and Danny were currently making the snowballs, and then handing them over to Squirtle and Bulbasaur, who would then hand them over to Danny's Geodude, who would use its strength to pelt them at the balloon. Geodude was able to do this at such a fast rate that Team Rocket's balloon began to get overrun with snowballs, practically up to their heads at this point. Team Rocket simply respond by throwing a lot of these snowballs back at Ash and the gang. So this leads Ash and Danny to try another strategy, which is having Danny's Scyther load Electrode onto a plank and have Ash's Pokemon act as counterbalances, which would send the Electrode up into the balloon. And this plan works. I just don't know where they got the plank from. The impact from Electrode entering the balloon causes it to shake, which shakes Pikachu's glass cage out of the balloon as he falls to the ground, with Ash catching it. Yay, Pikachu was safe. James then sends out his Victory Bell to attempt to reclaim Pikachu, but of course Victory Bell does nothing but eat James as usual. With Electrode still in the balloon, Danny orders it to use Explosion, and it does, sending Team Rocket blasting off, exploding their balloon. With Team Rocket dealt with, the third challenge, being the race, could now begin again. Both competitors make it back down to the rocky part of the mountain, as opposed to the snowy part, and Ash almost runs into one of the boulders, due to picking up too much speed. Thankfully, though, Bulbasaur is able to use its vines to dig into the rock and steer them away, although this ends up steering them into a forest where they crash through a whole bunch of trees, so it ended up not being that much more of a pleasant ride. With the trees acting as a shortcut, Danny continues down the main path, no longer seeing Ash, and believing he was just that far ahead. And, while he was ahead, and was about to cross the finish line, Ash taking the shortcut of the trees caused him to ride up a branch into the air, leading him to fall right next to Danny. The fall results in a lot of his sled breaking, to the point where it's just a small little circle at this point. However, this actually works to his advantage, as due to the sled being lighter, it's able to go faster, and he's only able to go even faster when he runs into a rock, which causes the circular shape of the sled to spin around, making it go extremely speedy. He's so fast that he's able to pull ahead of Danny and win the race, therefore winning 2 out of 3 challenges. However, the circular shape of the sled spinning results in him going past the finish line and spinning into the water, although he eventually climbs out. Tracy and Misty, who had already made it down the mountain in the cable car at this point, immediately run up to Ash, making sure that he was okay after almost drowning in the water. Danny then gets out of his sled and gives Ash his reward for winning, the Sea Ruby badge, as Ash holds it up proudly and thanks his Pokemon for all their help. Misty and Tracy congratulate Ash on the win, although Misty doesn't hide the fact that she did wish that Danny would have won. The episode then ends with Ash and the gang saying goodbye to Danny as they ride off on Lapras toward the next island, with Ash looking at his Sea Ruby badge proudly. He had done it, his second Orange League badge.